Today's lesson is about the collection of data. The last two lessons were about how to classify data, and this is actually getting into the scientific background of how to get the data. So there are two main ways, either by an experiment or in the use of an observational study. The main distinction is that in an experiment, there is something that is applied to the subjects, where in an observational study, it's just you are exactly that, observing. So in the scientific community and in terms of whether or not if there's a better choice for collecting data, experiments are believed to be better because they reduce the effect of some variable that is in whatever group that you're observing. And so they're often more controlled, and you can be able to make better conclusions about the data that you collected. In an observational study, again, you're just making observations. There's a way to classify the different kinds of studies. You can have a retrospective study, which is that data has already been collected, and you go and you look over data that has already been collected. A cross-sectional study is when that you get the data at one specific time. And then a prospective study is when you go forward in time and observe groups that have some characteristic that you're looking for. So you're looking at, in their example in the slide here, smokers versus non-smokers. Again, observational studies don't affect the environment of the subjects very often. They're people, and you're just observing them in their daily lives and what they're doing. Again, the benefit of an experiment is if you are trying to make a statement about some product or something that is in an environment that specific thing is applied to a group and then not applied to a specific group. And so that's why we're able to make better statements about that particular thing that is applied, the treatment that is applied to a group or not a group. So that is the distinction between collecting data. Either you're just collecting data and you're observing what it is already present, or you are affecting or modifying the environment. And it is believed that experiments are easier to speak to. When you collect the data, you could say that treatment A did affect, and see here, this group didn't have the treatment. And so therefore we can say a little bit more clearly that, not A causes B, but that there is some association. So in an experiment, as you're seeing in this slide, there is some kind of treatment, and you observe the effect of the treatment. And in an observational study, there's some collection of data, but it is based off of what was already present in a particular group's environment. So in an experiment, there are some key components that scientists look for when conducting an experiment: replication, blinding, and randomness. Blinding is when the subject doesn't know whether or not they're in the treatment or the not treatment group. And a double-blind experiment would be if the person who's applying the treatment also doesn't know whether or not they have a placebo or they are actually in the experiment group. Replication is that you can't make any broad statements if you only apply it to one person. So making sure that you try to replicate an experiment more than once. And then randomness is when you don't decide which group gets the treatment or doesn't get the treatment. So right after this video, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions to see how you feel on the difference between an experiment and an observational study. And this is just one way to classify how data gets collected.